All right, welcome to another deep dive. This time, we are cracking open a Norwegian novel. It's called Una, and let me tell you, it's going to be one for the bookshelves after we're done with it. But we're not just skimming the surface here. This is going to be like, peeling back the layers and really getting into the nuts and bolts of this literary masterpiece.
That's right. I mean, Una is so fascinating because it really doesn't shy away from those kind of like darker sides of family life, right? We're talking secrets, betrayals, and like this deep human need for connection. But the way those themes are explored through symbols and the characters, it's really just masterful.
Yeah, and from the very beginning, we meet Una, and she's this young woman working in a psychiatric ward, which to me is a really interesting detail. Like, it makes you wonder, is the author hinting at something about Una's own inner struggles from the get-go?
Right, like her work environment kind of raises all these questions about her own psychological state. Is this something she's drawn to because of personal experience, or is it like foreshadowing, the emotional turmoil she's about to go through?
Right, like maybe she's trying to understand herself by working with other people's complexities. And speaking of complex, let's talk about Tor. He's a big-time motivational speaker, calls himself Motivator even, like he's got this whole YouTube channel dishing out life advice. But I don't know, something about him, his perfect life, it just feels a little too perfect.
The irony is pretty thick, isn't it? This
Yeah.
guy is preaching family values and happiness, but as the story unfolds, we find out he's got this big secret from his past, and this secret basically sets the whole story in motion.
Yeah, it's almost like we're set up to believe in this picture-perfect version of Tor before the author pulls the rug out from under us. But before we get to that secret, let's meet the rest of the family. Una's got these half-siblings, Kristen and Kala. And when Una shows up, they're not exactly thrilled to see her.
The reaction is so telling, right? It's not just surprise, it's more like resentment, maybe even fear. Like, what does Una's arrival threaten to disrupt? And how does Tor, this supposed expert on family harmony, fit into all of this?
Well, he's the connecting thread. He's the one who created this whole messy web of relationships. At the center of it all, that big secret, it involves his son, Kala, and this handyman named Henning. And the way the author reveals the secret, it's so clever. It's like peeling an onion, each layer adding a whole new dimension to the story.
Oh, yeah. It's a total slow burn. The tension just keeps building as we get these little pieces of the past. But it also makes you think, about how secrets can be so powerful and how they can warp relationships and have these ripple effects for generations.
And that's what happens here. We find out Kala has experienced this really deep trauma from his father's betrayal and what happened with Henning. And the novel doesn't sugarcoat it. It really delves into the lasting impact of this trauma on Kala's life.
And it does it in such a sensitive way. We see Kala's vulnerability, how he's guarded and has trouble connecting with people. It makes you wonder, how can anyone really move on when they're carrying a secret that heavy?
Yeah, and one thing that stood out to me was this memory Una has of going to the zoo with her dad when she was little. It seems like a happy memory, but it takes on a whole other meaning with everything else we learn. What do you think?
Oh, I think that zoo memory becomes like this really poignant symbol of the connection that Una has lost. It highlights the difference between her idealized image of her dad and what he actually did. Like, the joy of that childhood memory is tainted by the truth of Tor's actions.
Yeah, it's like looking at a happy family photo and knowing the truth behind the smiles.
Mm.
And speaking of families, we got to talk about Erna, Tor's wife. At first, she seems very composed, even controlling. But as we go deeper, there's definitely more to her.
Right, she's involved in Tor's actions for sure. But the novel doesn't just make her the villain. She's a victim too, trapped in a marriage built on lies and manipulation. And her relationship with Henning, well, that just adds a whole other layer of intrigue to the story, doesn't it?
It definitely makes you think about power dynamics and what people will do to keep their secrets hidden. And then there's Angie, Una's best friend. She's like the voice of reason through this whole crazy journey. Always there for Una, even when she questions what she's doing.
Angie's so grounded and practical. It's such a contrast to Una's emotional journey. Angie's that friend you need when things are tough, someone who believes in you even when you doubt yourself.
Yeah, like the anchor that keeps Una from getting lost in the storm. But even with Angie's support, Una can't ignore the truth forever. The story comes to a head when she finally confronts Tor about his past. And it leads to this huge confrontation that affects everyone involved.
That confrontation, that's like the heart of the book. It's a moment of truth-telling that exposes just how messed up their family dynamics really are. And it's so interesting because it brings up more questions than answers.
Okay, so that confrontation between Una and Tor, whew,
Yeah.
it's like everything just explodes. But the impact of that secret, it goes way beyond that one moment. It's this crack in the foundation of their family, and every new thing we learn just makes that crack wider.
Yeah, exactly. We start to see how much this secret has really affected each of them, especially Kale. There are these moments where we learn about how Tor treated him kind of dismissive almost. Remember, Tor has built his whole persona around being this successful masculine guy who's in control. And Kala, he seems to struggle with those things. So maybe Kale represents all the things Tor is afraid of.
And it's those fears, those deep-seated beliefs, that stop Tor from seeing his son as the victim. Instead of helping Kala, he pushes him away.
Hmm.
And it just creates more pain and isolation.
And that's where the novel's exploration of trauma is so powerful, right? It's not just about what one person goes through, but how that trauma can affect future generations, how it shapes relationships and behavior without us even realizing it.
It makes you wonder if maybe Tor went through something similar when he was a kid. We get these glimpses into his past, how he was really resourceful, even collecting bottles to make money.
Right. It's like he learned to connect his self-worth with money and success. Maybe that's where he got validation, or maybe it was the only way he felt in control. Could that be why he's so obsessed with keeping up this perfect image, even if it hurts his own kids?
It's definitely a thought-provoking idea, and it shows that sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones who are hurting themselves.
Absolutely. But just because we understand that doesn't make what they did okay. It just helps us understand the bigger picture. And it's in that space where we try to understand these hard truths that healing can start to happen.
That's where Una comes in, right? Throughout the book, she's trying to figure out this family she's just discovered. She even goes to Dalen to spend time with Kelly, hoping to connect with him.
But it's not easy for either of them. Kala is so withdrawn and guarded, still really affected by what happened. And Una is dealing with her own disillusionment, realizing her dad isn't who she thought he was.
Yeah, she's caught between this desire for a connection and the reality of who her father is. Like, she's grieving for a dad she never actually had.
And while she's going through all of that, Tor is kind of losing it. His perfect facade is crumbling, and he's getting more and more desperate to control everything.
His finances are a mess. His marriage is falling apart. His kids are distancing themselves. He's on the verge of a breakdown.
And it all leads up to this really intense scene where Una and Kale end up on a road trip, basically running away from Tor, who is acting totally erratic. It's such a brilliant scene because it forces Una and Kale to face their shared trauma, you know? They're stuck together in this car, speeding towards who knows where, and all the secrets start spilling out.
And in that vulnerable moment, Kala finally tells Una everything about what happened with Henning. He confesses that his father saw the abuse but didn't stop it. And even worse, he blamed Kali for it.
It's just devastating. It shatters any hope Kali might have had about reconciling with his dad. And it shows how deep the betrayal goes.
And for Una, it confirms her fears. Her dad isn't just flawed, he's dangerous. He can cause so much pain and then just turn away from it.
It's a turning point for Una. She realizes she can't escape her family history, but she can decide how she reacts to it. And that's when she makes a decision that changes everything.
And things are really intense. Una and Callie are on the run, Tor's right behind them, and the truth about their family is out in the open.
It feels like something's got to break, you know?
And it kind of does. As they're driving, Callie starts having a full-on panic attack. Una pulls over at a rest stop to try and calm him down, but he's really freaking out.
Yeah, you can tell just how deep his trauma runs. He's been holding on to this for so long, and it's like the whole car chase has triggered something in him.
And in that moment when he's so vulnerable, he tells Una the worst part. It's really sad. And for Una, it's a wake-up call. She realizes that her whole idea of connecting with her father was just a fantasy. He wasn't who she thought he was.
It's a painful realization, but it's an important one. She has to face the truth no matter how awful it is so she can finally move on from her past.
And that's what she decides to do. She makes a big decision right then and there.
She's choosing her own family, one based on love and support instead of manipulation.
And it's so powerful because it shows how important it is for women to support each other. Una and her mom haven't always gotten along, but in this moment, they come together to protect Kale.
Right. They show how strong women can be, especially when they're facing tough times. They create this safe space where Kali can start to heal.
And when they get to the house, they're not alone. Angie's there too, waiting for them. It's this beautiful moment of connection, a reminder that even when things are really dark, Love and friendship can win out.
Yeah, it's a nice change after all the tension and darkness. It shows how strong chosen families can be, sometimes even stronger than the families we're born into.
And I don't want to spoil the ending, but let's just say Una chooses herself. She chooses to heal. She chooses to break free from all the messed up things that have been holding her family back.
It's a great ending. It shows how strong the human spirit can be and how powerful the truth is. Una's journey reminds us that we can all face our past, change our own stories, and build a future based on who we really are.
So there you have it. Una is a really moving and powerful book. It explores family secrets, betrayal, and the search for connection. It's a story that will stick with you long after you've finished it.
Absolutely. I would recommend it to anyone who's ever dealt with complicated family stuff, secrets, or trying to heal from the past.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Una. We hope it's made you curious to read the book for yourself. Until next time, happy reading.